We lost Matt Franklin there. Okay, good evening, Mill Valley. As Vice Mayor and Chair of the Housing Advisory Committee, it's my pleasure to call to order this meeting of September 30th. It's the 8th meeting that we've had. And with that, I'll turn it over to Danielle to begin the meeting.
Sure. And welcome to the attendees and panelists. In compliance with the local and state shelter-in-place orders, the city no longer offers an in-person meeting for the public to attend. Members of the public may offer public comment remotely from a safe location. Committee members or staff may participate in this meeting electronically or via teleconference. Again, this is the Housing Committee. It's an advisory committee that was initiated in 2017 to assist staff, Planning Commission, and City Council in implementing the housing element, programs, and policies. With that, I'll start off with roll call. I think I have you muted, so Councilmember McCauley.
Present.
Councilmember
Carmel, present.
Sorry. Planning Commissioner Greg Hildebrand, probably messed up that last name too.
No, you did well. At present.
Planning Commissioner Yola.
Present, thanks.
And Member at Large Franklin.
Present.
Thank you. So all members are present. There's a quorum before the committee tonight. And before moving to the agenda, I believe there's some opening remarks that our City Manager Al Piombo would like to present.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. As Danielle already stated, the Housing Advisory Committee was established back in 2017 as part of the Affordable Housing Ordinance. The committee bylaws were adopted by the City Council back in March of 2018. This Housing Committee is an advisory body to the City Council and the Planning Commission on matters related to the housing element of our general plan. There are two overarching goals of the general plan, which are to protect and enhance the natural beauty and small town character of Mill Valley, and to encourage the continued diversity of housing, income levels, and lifestyles in our community. The housing element is part of the general plan and includes 38 different programs that are considered for implementation. The city's already worked to get a number of these housing related programs started. Last year, we updated our accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We'll be releasing later this fall a website that will help promote ADUs. We've updated our mixed use and multifamily standards, and we introduced impact fees deposited into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which can be used to support the two items that are on our agenda tonight. And as stated, we've also established the Housing Advisory Committee to assist in housing related matters. The identification of public owned sites, which we will discuss later in the meeting, has been an action item for implementation since 2013. As far as this committee is concerned, in June 2019, the committee developed priorities, policies, and programs to address housing needs and opportunities while recognizing the city's capabilities and limitations. The Housing Advisory Committee work plan addresses 4 key strategies intended to protect existing housing, enhance existing housing, produce additional dwelling units, and target the local community, including tenants and city's workforce as potential new residents. The Housing Advisory Committee's work plan identifies a number of programs to be pursued in the next 2 years. The items on the agenda tonight, the home match program and the identification of publicly owned land to leverage for new affordable housing, are just 2 of the several items identified in the committee's 2-year work plan. The meeting this evening is the culmination of a preliminary examination of city-owned properties that have the potential for leveraging in support of affordable housing. However, this is simply the first of many conversations and steps to decide which options, if any, the city should consider in its effort to directly support affordable housing. This meeting will serve to explain the work plan proposal and provides the forum for initial community feedback to be heard. With that, I'll turn it back over to Senior Planner Danielle Stoddy to lead the presentation of our 2 agenda items.
Okay, with that, let's turn it over to having public open time. As a reminder, this is public open time for items not on the agenda tonight, specifically related to housing that are in the purview of the Housing Committee. Each individual will have the opportunity to speak on the agenda items at a later date. I see a lot of hands raised. I think that's trying to get in the queue for agenda item number 2. I would ask that you, and I will lower the hands right now, requesting that you only raise your hand for items that are not on the agenda related to housing. If you would like to state your name, address the chair, state your view succinctly and avoid repetition, and limit your comments to 2 minutes, please. These are items that cannot be taken action on. The committee can briefly respond to statements and make questions proposed by the public, ask for clarification from staff, refer the matter to staff, and request staff to report back to the committee at a subsequent meeting. You also cannot secede your comments to another person to add time to your comment. So with that, again, I'm going to lower the hands, and then I want you to raise your hands if this is for an item not on the agenda tonight related to housing. And Mark, I will let you take it from there.
Thank you. First, I have Lawrence Litvick, and please forgive me if I mispronounce anybody's name, but if you can go ahead and talk, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Lawrence Litvack. I live at 14 Mid-Hill Drive in Mill Valley, in the Scott Valley neighborhood. I've been a resident of Mill Valley for 25 years. I'd like to make some general comments to the committee. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I just want to represent to the committee that there are a lot of people in the town right now who want to see more housing developed, especially affordable housing, but that means different things to different people. But, you know, things that are going to make housing available to our children, things that are going to increase the diversity of the town, and things that are going to help us tackle this problem of global warming, where our development in the Bay Area keeps getting further and further extended geographically, because no towns will let people build housing. And so that's causing vehicle miles driven to go up. And that's the biggest challenge right now the state faces by far in controlling greenhouse emissions. So normally in these meetings where housing is being talked about, we hear from people who feel they're going to be in some way adversely impacted by a particular housing project or some aspect of it. And that tends to dominate the conversation. But there's a lot of people out there who, you know, also care about their neighborhoods, but understand that there's a variety of values that we have to consider as a community. And it's not just about keeping everything exactly the same in the lot next door to us, or, you know, down the street, or whatever, okay? We've got to consider the big picture, the bigger picture of the community and the region, as well as, you know, just what's happening in our own neighborhood. Doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, I'm going to have a little less density in my neighborhood, but now greenhouse emissions are going to be off the charts. It's going to be 100 degrees out. There's going to be smoke in the air. And so great, I live in a neighborhood that's a bit less dense, but I can't even go outside. Does that make sense from a social point of view? You can extend the same argument when we're talking about affordability to live in the Bay Area for our children, or the mix of people that live in our community. We've got to consider how.
Okay, Lawrence, I'm sorry, but that's
Thank you.
your time has expired. And if you have any further comments, you can email that to planning@cityofmillvalley.org. Thank you. Next, we have Simon Vanzentine. Once again, I apologize for any mispronounce of anyone's name. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak now.
Hey, Mark, thank you. It's Simon Van Sinchem. I live in Mill Valley. I'll speak to item number 3 quickly now because I can't stay around for much longer. I went on a walk this morning to a lot that's going to be discussed, and it's a pretty nice lot, but I think the pressure for affordable housing is much greater. There's already a lot.
Sorry, if you're going to speak on item 3, we
I'm
can't
also
take
going to
your
speak about other
comments.
things.
Okay.
I'd generally like to express support for affordable housing in our community. I'd also like the city to pursue equitable housing opportunities that actually give tenants democratic control over the places that they live in, like a community land trust, which has had great success in places like West Marin and Oakland to provide affordable housing to low-income families. Note that I said low income, not affordable housing. We can take a cue from Oakland, who has set up a $12 million fund dedicated to community-based housing solutions like community land trusts. Another option for funding of these projects is the police budget, which is the only departmental budget the city didn't cut this year. I hope that all the people who claim they are for affordable housing, but not at the cost of their backyard, are genuine about pursuing affordable housing. So I guess here's me calling your bluff. If you're genuine about doing that work and you still feel that you'd rather not have the park that is, or any other plot in your neighborhood be developed, please come to the depot downtown at 7 on Wednesdays, either tonight or next week, to work on this as a community. This meeting looks like it also has met the limit of participants.
You didn't have it before.
Hearing from people that they can't join anymore. Some people aren't being allowed in. And also then finally, let's also always remember that the people who would most benefit from this affordable housing are very probably working at the times of these meetings and don't have the time to call into these calls. Thank you.
Hey, Simon, one quick
Thank you,
heads up. Simon, one quick heads up. It's John McCauley, the chair. Just so you know, this is being recorded. So if you got to leave and you want to hear the rest of it later, you're welcome to catch the video recording.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be. And I'm also going to leave so that other commenters can hop on and call because there's a 100-person limit apparently for the call.
So just so participants know, I am trying to work on the ability to add more attendees. I'm not sure what happened with that. So we're working on that right now, just so you know.
Thank you. Next, Sean Tai.
Hi, Sean Tai, 78 Marguerite. Well, I'm glad low-income housing, affordable housing, whatever we want to call it, has gotten the attention of Mill Valley, more than 100 people in the meeting, because I think we can all agree that it's insufficient and the mechanism is broken. I'm not just commenting on the zoning of Scott Highland Park. I'm talking about a permanent budget item that builds city and community owned housing. I'm talking about a permanent budget item that actually addresses diversity, doesn't need to sell land to private developers, just like they do in Vienna, or just like they do in Tokyo or Copenhagen. This fund can keep public housing homegrown, avoid selling off land to private developers, and get around the red tape that, from county or city, federal, state, that hasn't built affordable housing in Mill Valley for 30 years. So if people are actually committed to real diversity in Mill Valley, as I've read in the public comments section, consider if yourself would fight for this. Getting it started is as simple as a city council vote, or if needed, a citizens initiative for a real affordable housing tax measure. Thank you.
Sean, are you still there?
Yep.
Can you please state your name and your address for the record? I apologize, I didn't ask that in first.
Sean Tai, 78 Marguerite.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Frederick Sherman. Frederick, if you could state your name and address for the record, please. And I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and allow you to speak. Frederick, are you there? Okay, Frederick, I think we might have lost you there. So if you're still on, if you want to speak, can you re-raise your hand? Next, I'm going to go to Eric. And once, Frederick, if you come back on, I will go ahead and, there you are, Frederick. I'm going to go ahead, since you were in line earlier in the queue, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak this moment, Frederick.
Thank you, council members. Frederick Sherman, 16 Glen, Mill Valley. I agree largely with what Sean Ty said. I think the issue to me is really to really think about this in a constructive manner, that we are allowing affordable housing. And I think we should really come up with what is affordable housing. We would take the federal guidelines that are established in the US. It's almost impossible to build subsidized housing in California right now. There's been numerous articles about this. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, pick an article. I think, to me, we need to get over the hurdle of the financial burden of cities or developers, because subsidized housing is really a tax credit. And for any developer or city, horribly, and cities are left holding the bag. And so I think, I agree with Sean, this should be an agenda item for the council and Mill Valley to really ascertain the benefits of what we're planning to do with this. And then the question is, where do we do this in this city? Where is there land other than park land that you want to sell that we can actually build affordable housing on?
This is related to the second item, so
Okay,
we're
sorry.
going to say thank you and
Sorry.
move on. Again, so your comments should really only be about items not on the agenda. Affordable housing in terms of sites is really an item, and I'm just telling this for other people with their hands up. It's really an item for item number 2. If we could leave it for the conversation, item number 2, please.
And John McCauley, the other point I would make is that you're not addressing the city council tonight. You have 2 city council members, 2 planning commissioners, and one member at large here. This is not a city council meeting. So hopefully I would appreciate if we can get into the meat of the meeting, fairly soon once we finish the public open comment period. Because when we get into the meat, we'll welcome all comments on the actual agenda items that we are proposing.
Obviously, I fucked up. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, next is Eric Martini. If you could state your name and address for the record, I will go ahead and allow you to speak at this moment. Unmute you.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Fine, just fine, yes, sir.
All right. Hi, my name's Eric Martini. I live at 264 Cardinal Road. So I'm very happy to finally see some admittedly small, but still some steps being made toward some actual real life equity in this city that has such a disgusting history of segregation. I guess for this section of the meeting, I want to second Simon's call for a community land trust. I think that's very important when tackling the intersection of racial equity and housing. We need a community land trust. And secondly, I just want to also second that point about affordable housing. I think we need to be very clear when talking about projects now and in the future that affordable housing in terms of the state definition and the city's definition is kind of an arbitrary definition. It is based on factors that ultimately in Mill Valley, affordable housing is not affordable for, like, say, the people who commute here to work. we need to be very clear about what we mean when we say affordable housing. I think most people are talking about housing that is available to the kind of working class people who are currently living outside Marin even, and having to commute in here to work. And I think using the term low income housing is a good distinction to make. So I just want to call that point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eric. Your time is up. And if you have any additional comments, you can email those to planning@cityofmillvalley.org. Thank you.
All right.
Next, Henry Einman. I'm going to unmute you, and if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Henry, and I won't be stating my address, but I want to call in general support of affordable housing, low-income housing in Mill Valley. I think it's really important in a county with such high levels of segregation, of racial segregation and income inequality. Myself and other people I know who I've talked to in their 20s and 30s don't really know how we're gonna keep living in Marin. It's unsustainable. And what is just gonna end up happening is that the people who are working service jobs, lower income jobs in Marin are gonna be driving from other places in the county into Marin. So it's really unsustainable. It's not a way to build a long-lasting community, and it promotes disparity when we don't have low-income housing. So I support low-income housing in Mill Valley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Next, we have Ashley Gold. Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you could state your name and address for the record, please. Okay, it looks like Ashley, if you're wanting to speak, if you go ahead and raise your hand one more time. There we go. Thank you. Okay, Ashley, I think you're on. Can you hear us?
So, can you guys hear me? I'm not Ashley.
Okay. Do you have Ashley? Are you there? Okay, Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next person. I'm not sure if they're having some difficulties or not on your end, but I do show that you are unmuted. But at this time, we cannot hear you. If you might want to check and see if you need to unmute on your side, on your end on Zoom. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put you back on mute. We're going to go to the next person, and if I'll lower your hand, and if you can work the issues out on your end, we will pull you up here again in a moment. Next, we have Mark Rubin. Mark, I'm going to unmute you. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Mark Rubin, 415 Buena Vista, Mill Valley, California. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, just fine.
So the issue that I bring to the committee is the fact that open space is very hard to replace. Once you take it away, you can't put it back again. So the question becomes, you're doing this because you want to be able to have affordable housing someplace in Marin.
Hey, Mark, it's John McCauley. Sorry, you're speaking on item 2. We'd love to have your comments, but you need to wait until item 2 comes
I'm
up.
sorry. I apologize. Okay, I will mute myself for the time being.
No worries. Anybody, and we're looking forward to hearing what people have to say, but we have a process we're going through. So once again, this is public open time. It's not for items on the agenda. And because it's not the city council, it's a narrow committee dealing with housing matters. You can make general housing comments, but if it's anything about what we're talking about tonight, we look forward to your comments, but please delay until we move to item 2. Thank you.
Yes, and the more hands that go down, the sooner we can get to the items on the agenda. So as an incentive.
That's a good diplomatic way of putting that.
I also
Okay,
just want
Nick.
to point out, can I also just point out that the webinar has been extended. So for people that were having difficulties getting in, thank you for your patience and please spread the word. I'm also emailing some people out that we're having some issues.
Great. All right, next is Elias K. If you could say your name and state your address for the record, please. I'm going to unmute you now.
Hi, my name is Elias K. I grew up in Marin County, 30 years old. 10 years ago when I was a young kid growing up here and going to different people's houses all over Marin, everybody had a different economic background. Now it seems like there is no middle class in Marin. It's all upper class people, and it's majority white. I'm pretty surprised to find out that Marin County is one of the most racially segregated, or actually is the most racially segregated county in all of California. It's a big problem. We need low-income housing. We need to be able to promote desegregation. And so I appreciate the Housing Advisory Committee talking about that tonight and considering that also ongoing in the future. Yeah, so I strongly support low-income housing, and I do differentiate that from affordable housing. Low-income housing means people who aren't from Marin County can move here from places like Oakland or Richmond and help enrich our cities and our county in general by bringing diversity. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Betsy Michael. If you could please go ahead and start and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay.
Yes, just fine.
Okay, good. Betsy Bickley, and 335 Hazel Avenue up in Nether Canyon. And I just have 2 quick things. I'm wondering if there are real estate people involved in this issue, because it seems like when they bring people out to look at houses, they could help encourage diversity.
Hey, Betsy, my neighbor and friend, if you're talking about the item specifically, that will come before us in a few minutes. So,
really?
Yeah, we're doing it. This is public overtime, not item 2, which is the specific proposal.
Yeah.
And you have plenty of time to chat then.
Okay. That's fine. And then the second item is, if a person wanted to donate their house to the city for the purpose of it's either being sold or used for affordable housing or low income housing, whatever, is there a mechanism for doing that? And is it available to people? I know somebody who's leaving her house to Malt.
So Betsy, I can tell you that the city does have the ability to provide a tax deduction for charitable contributions, and it's not something there's a program for because it's never happened before, but I'm sure if there's somebody interested, we could help out and make that happen with great joy.
Thanks.
Sure.
Great. Next, we have Zine Griffin. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Ziana Griffin. I don't feel comfortable speaking my address on public comment, but I just want to quickly affirm that I think this low-income housing opportunity is extremely important to the shift that's happening right now and the efforts to desegregate Marin and to make all of our counties more equitable. I know that Mill Valley is launching a task force, and I think that this committee needs to work in tandem with that. Because really these issues aren't mutually exclusive, and I think it's essential to creating an interracial progressive community that's really welcoming to everybody. And I know that Mill Valley can be a very daunting place for people of color, and upon moving here it was somewhere that my family considered living, but as it was 5 years ago, wasn't somewhere that we wanted to be. And I still think there's so many amazing things about Mill Valley, but it's essential to making a shift into a more diverse county is the housing opportunity. So I just encourage all of you to, be on the right side of history on this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Clifford Waldick. If you could state your name and address for the record, I will go ahead and unmute you. And it looks like we've lost you there, so I don't know if you were wanting to speak or not. I'll give you a minute to see if you can raise your hand once more. All right, there you go, Clifford. Let's try this again. Okay, Clifford, looks like we've lost you again, but I think right now that would be the last hand that I see up. Betsy's hand is up, but I'll go ahead and lower her hand since she has already spoke. So at this moment, I do not show any other hands up. Whoop. As soon as I said that, we have Penny Gladstone. If you could please state your name and address for the record, I'll go ahead and unmute you and allow you to speak this moment. Okay, Penny, I'm I'm sending a message to unmute. I don't know if you could see it on your end, but if you can unmute, you do have an opportunity to speak if you wish.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Just fine. Perfect.
Okay. I just want to, with regards to affordable housing, thank John McCauley and the staff for possibly moving forward in the reality of affordable housing, which we must embrace. Not a moment too soon, especially for the people who work in this community, that it should go to them. We need these people right here with us. It must happen. And I'm behind it as much as I don't want to lose open space. As the man said earlier, we won't get back.
Penny, let me interrupt again.
Okay.
Penny, we haven't moved on to item 2 yet. So we're actually just having public open time now. So if you could hold your comments, which we're glad to hear, but would like to hear them when the agenda item is before us.
Okay.
Thank you, Penny. Okay, are we ready to move on to our first item on the agenda?
Yes.
I still show one hand raised. It's Phil Hindenburger. Phil, I'm going to unmute you and allow you to speak this time.
This will be the last comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Phil Hindenburger. I live at 19 Glen Drive. I'm a 46-year resident of the Mill Valley community. During that time, I've had the opportunity to work on a number of projects that deal with issues that are, I think, important to this committee. I am a proponent of community housing. I very much want to see this be a success. My son lives in a community which has a very effective program, and he's been able to run his small business in a very expensive town because he lives in a subsidized house.
So Phil, I hate to interrupt you again here, but the topic of the subsidized housing is a specific topic that will be before us in a few minutes if we can finish the open time. And unless you have a broad comment, I'd like you just to hold your comment until the specific item is before us.
Yeah, all right. I looked over the charge for the Housing Advisory Committee, and I guess what I wanted to comment on was it seems like there's some really important tools to achieve community housing that aren't listed as on your work plan, your 2-year work plan. There is nothing about community-wide tax revenue measures listed anywhere. Maybe it's something that's been considered elsewhere. Maybe it's something that the council doesn't want the Housing Advisory Committee to work with at this time. But I was hoping that the council representative could address just for a minute whether or not it's within the scope of the Housing Advisory Committee's authority to take up issues like tax revenue measures to fund community housing. I just really wonder how we can achieve the number of units that are needed in this community with the various approaches that have been suggested and are laid out in the work plan.
Well, Phil, thanks for your comment. We normally don't have direct correspondence with regards to public open time comments because they're not agendized. I can say that the council works closely with the subcommittee to find ways to improve housing. And as our city manager mentioned earlier, what we're talking about tonight is just a small set of a broader set of principles that the city has been working on. And you're welcome to drop me a note or our senior planner, Daniel Staddy, and we can talk about this further. So with that, are we finished now? I think we'd like to move on to our first item on the agenda.
Yes, I will share my screen here. And I'm going to provide a just quick overview of some general concepts that will lead us into items 1 and 2 for the discussion. So, okay. So we mentioned the general plan goals. There's 2. They've been in place since 1989. They're protecting and enhancing the natural beauty and encouraging diversity of housing, income levels, and lifestyles in the community. There are several components or chapters. We call them elements of the general plan. They include housing, noise, natural environment, mobility, climate action, sustainability. All the policies and programs that you see that the city implements is really related to and aiming towards these 2 broad overarching goals for the city. In the housing element, there are these programs that work towards the Mill Valley's housing needs. We have heard from our neighbors, we've heard from community members that have their college students living at home that can't find a place to rent or live, that housing is expensive, especially in Marin County. There's about 18% of California households that can afford a home in Mill Valley. The annual income is about $300,000 probably now. These numbers are a bit old, so I'd say it's rounding up to about $300,000 for an annual income to purchase a home. That causes issues. There's an issue also just renting. In order to afford 1-bedroom rental, you also need to make quite a bit of money, about $50 an hour. A salary of about over $100,000 for a 2-bedroom. So rentals as well as ownership is an expensive concept of the housing in Mill Valley. And then also we hear the dynamics that causes in the community, the loss of community, the loss of our local firefighters or teachers living in town, having the workforce actually drive out of town on a daily basis, causing traffic and impacts. About 91% of our workforce live outside of Mill Valley. Our housing stock, this is more about our dynamics of our demographics. So we have an older population and we have a barbell community. We have a lot of young households with kids under 18, as well as older households with people over 65. So those are dynamics that we're looking at. We have about 75% of our housing being single family and about 25 being multifamily, which is why you see a lot of single family development that occurs in town. We have about 6,000 households. That is basically the average of about 2 people per household, which makes sense. If you take that 6,000 and you times it by 2, you get a population of a bit over 12,000. With that, there's about a third of a population that live alone, and there's a lot of seniors living alone. And there's also households, like I mentioned, with 18-year-olds. And then there's also about a large portion of owner occupancy that happens in Mill Valley as opposed to rental. So in terms of how we can diversify housing, there's conversations that we have in the housing element, as well as we have had just within the community. How can we diversify housing? Through land negotiations, establishing an affordable housing project. In the staff report, it talks about and lists, I think there's 9 projects in town. It includes actually a Fireside, which is outside of city limits, but one of the more recent projects, the example we have here on the slide is Pickleweed. It's 32 units. It was associated with a larger project. There's a townhouse project, Mill Creek Meadows, that was developed. As part of that development, there was an agreement that this affordable housing would be built. There's a lot of land in 70s and 80s that allowed for some of these projects to develop. There's also different money and funding available at the state, local, and federal level for affordable housing, redevelopment dollars. Accessory dwelling units. We have been the leader in accessory dwelling units for a long time. Our ordinance is old. It's been in place for quite some time, and we've been very successful. And it's great in sprinkling, little smaller units in our largely single-family neighborhoods, and we have a lot of them. Over, like I said, 75% of our stock is single-family. So sprinkling these smaller units allows for life cycle housing to use that ADU in different ways, either to help with raising a young child with a nanny in the house, later on having your college child come back, and then potentially even moving into the ADU to allow for a larger family to live in the single family home, as well as also diversifying in supplementing income. We average about 12 new ADUs a year. That's up from 8. And there's continued interest in town. There's also inclusionary housing, sprinkling affordable housing within existing mixed-use projects. We have continued to upgrade and look at this ordinance. Right now, we require 25% of units that are built with multifamily projects to be affordable. I can go into what affordable is, but you can email me and I can provide more information. But that's pretty substantial. It's one of the largest percentages in, I believe, Marin County and also just the Bay Area. The example here is 505 Miller. There's affordable housing projects or affordable units in this project. And then there's the impact fee that we have established. And again, this is to collect money as part of the fair share in making sure that we are trying to diversify our housing stock. So home renovation projects over $105,000 pay a 1% impact fee. That's deposited straight into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The funds are reserved solely for creating, developing, or maintaining affordable housing. So those are the ways of diversifying housing. What we've heard and what I guess you've heard a little bit with the open public comments. We had a housing summit in November 2017, and the topic of housing was of concern and interest based on the number you can see in the room, just like this meeting tonight. The concerns raised were that there was about why affordable housing is limited in town. There was discussion about neighborhood opposition, lack of community consensus, traffic, and the lack of sites to build. So I recognize that those are issues and concerns, but we also recognize, I think, as a community that housing is an interest in providing the diversity of housing and the affordability of housing is important to members of the community as well. So trying to figure out how we can address both those items. The Housing Advisory Committee basically took the general plan, the housing element, and this concept of what we heard at the Housing Summit and continued the conversation. We've had 8 meetings. The Housing Advisory Committee started with listening and talking about what should be done. And the thought was innovative solutions. We don't potentially have a lot of money at this time. What are the innovative solutions and what can be done as quickly as possible in the short term? How can we assist the local Mill Valley workforce and seniors? And how can we use the trust fund money as it develops and grows? So you'll hear tonight the 2 concepts that have grown out of this conversation tonight, or out of this conversation, the development over not only months, but years of talking about housing policies that need to happen and be implemented in Mill Valley. So talking about the trust fund money and how to use it, some of the ideas were the incentives for affordable housing, such as reduced fees, acquisitions, loans for multifamily rehabilitation, and also a feasibility analysis to assess, the potential development and creation of a affordable housing project on public-owned land. Or in talking about that, also leveraging the money. So with that, there were priorities that were adopted and approved by Council in March 2020. They again reinforce the goals and community interests, and they really are to leverage housing, existing housing, and then identify ways of providing this new affordable housing project in town. So this all encapsulates the idea of protecting and preserving what we have, targeting the local community, and really expanding affordable housing where we can. With that, I'm going to turn it over to item 1. I'm going to keep this short. I know we have a lot of interested conversations to have. So Home Match was created and is being funded through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's again to promote this idea of diverse housing for diverse lifestyles and incomes. It matches homeowners with those in the community that are looking for housing. And since I have a big audience right now, I want you to look down at the bottom of that email and write that email down or contact me. I know you all have my emails because I've received emails from you. If you're interested in receiving more information, this is a program Covia is going to help with, and I'm going to let Tracy talk for just a few minutes to really introducing herself and showing her face, and if we can get Lita also on screen. This is the face of Mill Valley and working with me and talking about how we can work better as a community to house the workforce potentially, but also there's so many other benefits. Like I mentioned earlier, there's 1/3 of seniors that live alone. There's a lot of single family housing stock that is more than 1 bedroom. So there might be this opportunity, especially now with COVID, to provide these social connections, provide assistance of small household tasks in exchange for reducing rent, and providing a 3rd person as security in terms of rental agreements, and provides extra income. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Tracy just say a few words to introduce herself. And let me make sure I can do this right. Did that work, Tracy?
I think it did, yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. My name is Tracy Powell. I work with Covia, which is a nonprofit provider of housing and services to seniors. On the line, but you can't see her. I think there's some muting issues, is Lita Acosta, who's the director of this program in Marin. And she will really be doing a lot to make this program effective in Mill Valley. And we feel actually very proud to be included in this initiative of Mill Valley, of House Mill Valley. And I appreciate hearing already from so many people who are speaking that are concerned about the diversity and the affordability in Mill Valley. And Home Match is just one solution. And really what it is, as Danielle said, is to take existing housing stock so we don't have to wait for anything to be built, and take that existing housing stock of someone who has a home or an apartment with extra room, and we can match that individual with someone who is seeking the ability to be in Mill Valley, to be able to work close to where, live close to where they work and be part of a community. And so it's a matching process, and we could spend hours talking about it. We're not going to do that. But as you saw my email, and then we'll also be providing on the city site Lita's email and contact information. And really, we just wanted to spend a second here tonight to say thank you for the trust that the Housing Advisory Committee has put in us, that the city has, and we really are excited to be part of this process of alleviating some of the housing crisis in Mill Valley, being good partners to the city, and really just saying in the next couple of weeks we're going to be launching. We'd love this kind of impact and participation from all of you on the city. We want your feedback and to really be a team with you. So just thank you for the opportunity, and we're really excited to get to work to start housing people.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for your report. So this is not a action item. It's just a report out. So we have two ways to go here, fellow commissioners. If you would like to deliberate or comment, we can do that, but we should open it up for public comment ahead of time. If you would just like to just accept the report as it stands, we can then move on to item 2. So I can see you. Maybe put your thumbs up if you would like to have some deliberation, in which case we'll open up the public comment first and then deliberate. Okay, I don't see anyone putting hands up. I did check with our council legal people, and they said this is the way to do these kind of things. So we're accepting this report. We're taking no action on it. And therefore, at this point, I believe we can move on to the main event, which is the public sites analysis. So are we ready, Danielle?
Yes. So I think yeah. So we're going to fold public comment into item 2.
So we'll have plenty of time to comment on our main item coming up here. So before we get into the staff report and then questions, the order will be there'll be a staff report. There'll be questions from the committee members to staff, and then we'll have public comment, and then we'll have deliberation. That'll be the order of things. But I'd like to start with an opening comment. I feel pretty passionate about this particular topic, so I'd like to begin with just an open comment if I could. Now, many of you know that I'm more of an accountant than a speech giver, so I have to say that I've organized my thoughts a little bit. So let me begin. It won't take more than a couple of minutes. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes discussing what motivates my personal desire to advocate for low-income housing designated for people who work in Mill Valley. There's been a narrative that I've seen on some of the public comments and Nextdoor and in letters to the city on the proposal that we are considering tonight. Let me quote from one of the letters from a member of the public, quote, "Selling public assets to address state mandates based on false numbers that benefit private development interests but hollow out our community is regrettably misguided." So there's 2 messages I'd like to briefly address in connection with what's in there. So as Matt Franklin can comment later, the players in the field of low-income development are mission-driven 501c3 not-for-profits. They are not quote-unquote private development interests. That's not who we'll be dealing with if we're successful in what we're endeavoring with here. The second thing is I want to talk about these state mandates. While state mandates like the regional housing needs analysis, or what we call RENA, there are numbers that these numbers are something that all cities have to address. But my desire to advocate for this housing proposal goes way deeper than complying with the state actors that are taking away our local control. You can tell by that I'm not happy with that. But I would advocate for this path, what we're talking about tonight, whether the state mandate existed or not, okay? And let me give you some level set on my thinking here. In my 14 years of public service on Planning Commission and now City Council, I've heard a constant and consistent theme from our citizens, the desire for people who work in town to be able to afford to live in town. Since I moved here in 1984, I have watched our remaining mostly modest homes to be purchased and upgraded. The population and wealth of the Bay Area has continued to grow, creating more pressure on cost and availability. Look, everything is pricey in Mill Valley now, and this is not going to change. So generally and sadly, the reality is that given the economics, housing low-income workers in town is just not going to happen without some sort of help or intervention. As you'll discuss later, if we want help from the not-for-profit sector and the public sector, the city has to take the first step. We're in competition with all the other cities in the Bay Area who are all trying to move this ball forward. So no matter where we look to find property to raise funds or identify the site to actually build a 40-unit development, there will be disruption of the neighborhoods involved. Opposition is natural and understandable because we are asking for changes. But think of the reward. If 40 workers can become residents of Mill Valley rather than commuters, they become part of the fabric of our town. The addition of these residents, well, excuse me. The addition of these residents will add to our town's economic and likely ethnic diversity. Their kids can go to school here and further enrich our students. As a town, we have to assess the costs and benefits. We have 177 low-income units in town run by not-for-profit supporting seniors and disabled. 60 of the 150 units in town are at the Redwoods, which is a great example. We have 124 family units spread across town. Almost all were built before 1990, and none are specifically designated for housing for people working in Mill Valley. We are at a good intersection of time to take this cause up again. This committee got a presentation last year explaining that the attributes of Mill Valley make us a good candidate to obtain funds based on our current priorities. This may change if we wait. We now have the expertise within the Housing Committee to get this done. There will be controversy, there will be concern, but I think that now is the time to take the big step. The rewards are just too high. So with that as a general background, I would like to open up to our staff report. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this here one more time so everyone can see Tracy's email, and email me as well if you want any information on the home match program. So the sites analysis. The purpose of the sites analysis was to identify potential opportunities of city-owned property that could leverage affordable housing by either donating a piece of land or selling land to generate revenue in order to basically jumpstart a partnership with a nonprofit housing developer to build an affordable housing project in Mill Valley. In the earlier conversations, just as a further background, in my staff report, talks about the amount of basically units needed to pencil out an affordable housing project. So it's between 40 and 50 units basically to have the nonprofit entity be able to pencil things out with the funding that's available, state, local, federal, as well as the services that are provided throughout the lifetime of the housing that's provided. So why is this being done? Based on the policy guidance that comes from our general plan as well as other places, the housing element, as well as then also interest from the community, the council, and also the committee. This again isn't about state mandates. This is about really a discussion that has come through the community and through the committee as part of the work. At some point, we will have to talk about state mandates, but we're not now, and it's a great opportunity to really talk about the community and what the community would like to see. So the sites analysis looked at basically all the parcels. I looked at also parcels that were just privately owned or publicly owned, MMWG, PG&E, City or County of Marin. So there's about 150 parcels in the city of Mill Valley that are publicly owned. There are about 71 that are owned by the city. They're residential zoned, open area space, and commercial. And you'd think the 17 residential parcels would be gold mines. Unfortunately, they're not. They're small parcels that are right-of-ways associated with planned development. I'll give a few examples. Or on steep lots that are over 50% of slope. Commercial zoned areas are some of our, basically our like City Hall, as well as our parking lots are zoned commercial. And then open areas are also some areas that we see, which includes parklands, fields, as well as I think the community center might be zoned open area. So there's criteria that I used to review these sites, eliminate sites, and then a subcommittee was assembled, which consisted of Chair McCauley and Member at Large Franklin, to look at the sites to really have a deeper dive in a conversation about those sites that might have potential to, again, meet this goal of either donating land or selling land to generate revenue. So in terms of donating land, we looked at the parcels. There are a limited number of sites that are 1.5 acres. I go through the staff report. I mentioned how many, I think I get to 4 lots that are over 1.5 acres that aren't vacant, or are vacant, I'm sorry, and then are not on steep slopes. There's one possibility that is of interest, I think, after looking at all the sites. That is the area behind Hockey Park, the parking lot, and near the PSB building, the Public Safety Building. Even with the donation of land, local funding is required. Affordable housing projects are quite expensive in nature. Matt Franklin can talk about that a bit in his deliberations. And then we also recognize that there's probably other private owned sites that may exist based on other nonprofits, either their relationships or experience that could make things happen. Again, there's the school districts, potential churches, a lot of other entities that have large parcels that might make sense to partner with. But that would be something that the nonprofit would do. A notice of funding availability is a typical way in which you invite nonprofits to participate and show nonprofits that you're interested in working and partnering with them to build an affordable housing site. Typically identifies the amount of funding that's available and the local matching funds as well. And sometimes it identifies the actual site. So in looking at the parcels, there's the Public Safety Building, which is lot 2. It also has the solar panels. And lot 1, there's the one area behind the parking lot with possible potential. That's about 2 acres. Let's see here. Then there's the Miller parking lot. The Miller parking lot is one of the best looking parking lots, I would say, in Mill Valley. It's not narrow, it has potential. It's not big enough. It's in the floodway, but when you look at this with potentially the other sites, I know Sloat has been for sale for quite some time. There's a lot of potential here, but this would require a lot of research, partnership, additional money to make something like this happen. So then looking at the other potential opportunity of selling city property to raise money to kick off an affordable housing project was looked at. So we looked at all 71 parcels. So again, this tells the story of what I just mentioned. And then there was evaluation of these sites. So we looked at the size, I looked at the size and configuration of parcels. Narrow, odd-shaped lots and those associated with right-of-ways were taken out. The parking lot was taken out on Miller, and wetlands was taken out because they're in either a wetland or a park, like Bayfront Park, taken out because they're on wetlands and floodways. The slope of the parcel makes things difficult to build and usually is associated with large cut, large construction considerations, and also typically associated with a lot of trees. Then there's also parcels that have civic buildings on them. The library, community center, city hall, those parcels were eliminated due to the additional cost of redeveloping potentially the civic requirement as well, civic services. Again, the parking lots, they're too narrow, and again, you'd have to provide the parking not only for the commercial spaces, but then also the parking for the housing, and then the housing itself. So stacking those uses, basically, you need a bigger parcel than the parking lots we have. Playgrounds, playing fields were removed, and then lots with easements and legal restrictions. So this is an example of the downtown parking lot, oddly shaped lot. This is an example of a residential, but it's residential planned. Likely that this parcel is associated with the planned development and required some acreage of open space. It's also on a slope that's 42%, pretty far up the canyon. Mill Valley Reservoir has been talked about within the community in comments based on the MMWD's current easement that restricts the use of the lot right here. Here's the MMWD tank, and then here's the city-owned lot. The easement goes across the lot and restricts the use to open space. The subcommittee then worked with me on looking at these some additional sites and looked at basically several different things. The marketability, is the land sufficient size for the alternative use, the construction feasibility, and then the context and consideration of the existing use, the location of the parcel, and if there's alternative access for other open space. That was an opportunity. So that led us to the golf course. Golf course, we looked at several different parcels. We are not, I want to make it clear, I think there's some misperception and misinformation out there. The golf clubhouse and parking lot is not part of the proposal or recommendations to look at. It has the parking that's required for the clubhouse, as well as overflow of the golf course, as well as the actual building. But we did see the opportunity in looking further at these two lots. These lots are near the 7th tee, and it is Scott Highlands. I don't know if you can actually see my cursor, but the playground is over here, and the grassy field as part of lot 1. So those were the two potential areas that we saw potential for building on. And again, the number of housing units would have to be determined, and how they are configured would have to be determined. So that would be part of the next steps. What we've heard Scott Highlands loud and clear. You're concerned about the loss of open space, your annual picnic and egg hunts, your birthday parties, your reunions, catching up with neighbors, playing with your dogs and kids. We've also heard that you're unfairly impacted and burdened There are other means to generate revenue, such as a tax, and the grassy field is not underutilized. So we do hear those concerns. We're also trying to balance the idea of how to potentially generate funds for an affordable housing project. So with that, the lots allow for potential housing while also maintaining some open space in the area. There are existing open space opportunities for the neighborhood nearby. The playground would remain. Again, we have to figure out the configuration of the grassy field and how that would be configured. There's also other informal areas of the golf course that could be used. There is new programming with the golf course that is basically leave your clubs at home, go play on the golf course. And there's Boyle Park, trailheads, hiking areas in the area as well. In terms of the location and use of the open space, there are opportunities for alternatives in terms of open space. And then it's interesting that there's about 450 residences that are within a half mile of the site that we're looking at. The other parks and fields are in the higher 1,800, 2,000 residents range. So there
So
is
45 times the density of housing around the other parks as compared to this location and the golf course right across the street.
Right. What is proposed? So we're proposing further review and analysis, confirming the analysis of what's marketable and feasible, confirming the number of units and the approximate cost of an affordable housing site, and then circling back with the committee. So I'd like the committee to recognize and the public to recognize that there's more review that will occur to confirm what we have done so far, and then circling back with the committee, the community, and council. So we are not rezoning tonight. We are not proposing to rezone, but we are looking to confirm the analysis and then circle back with the committee. So will be the step one would be use of the trust fund to hire some experts to confirm our assumptions and our analysis, and then implement based on step one. So I have revised recommendations based on these steps. They're basically similar to the staff report, but just the understanding that we're coming back to the committee with more confirmation of what we've done so far, and then move forward from there. And that also provides the opportunity for additional feedback, community input, discussions with residents and the committee. So with that, there's additional review that's needed. Scott Highland's neighborhood is concerned. We hear you. Matt and I attended a Zoom meeting prior to this meeting with the Homeowners Association. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of the meeting, treating me with respect, but also voicing your opinions. I hope we can continue to do that tonight. Your neighborhood is wonderful, and you have some wonderful people. And I'm so happy to see you working together. I would also like to let you know that all the comments that you've given me will be going to City Council. So you do not need to resubmit your comments to City Council. I will be providing those comments to City Council, and they are processed right now for that. So with that, I will turn it over to the chair so you can ask questions, I believe, and then go from there to take comments.
Yeah, so the next step in the process, which it would, like it is normally, is that we can take questions of staff from the committee members. And then at the end of that process, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. And then after that, we will deliberate. So I actually have a few questions, and I'm going to direct them not just to you, Danielle. So within our subcommittee, we have Matthew Franklin, or Matt Franklin, and he's probably going to be shy in terms of telling the public who he is, but since there's 123 on board here, I'll state briefly who he is, and he might fill himself in. But He's the president and CEO of Mid-Penn Housing Corporation, which is one of the large not-for-profits which deals specifically with putting developments together of the type and nature that we're talking about. Matt, am I correct that you've done over 100 of these?
Yes, John.
And how many units are there?
So Mid-Penn, let me just, if I could, John, too, I just want to briefly say there was flyering tonight in the neighborhood that my son brought me this afternoon that, names me personally and my company, my nonprofit, Mid-Penn Housing, is the developer of these parcels. So I think it's really important to just clarify that I'm engaged in this in my civic capacity as a resident of Mill Valley. And of course, Mid-Penn Housing will not, develop in Mill Valley at all, as it would be a conflict. But back to your question, so we work in 11 counties throughout Northern California. We own and manage 8,500 affordable homes, and we develop and we manage them ourselves. And we have a large resident services corporation investing $10 million a year in after-school programs and health programs and economic mobility programs.
Okay, so a couple questions. So in my opening comments, I talked about, there are maybe a half dozen organizations that do this kind of work in the Bay Area, maybe more. I noted that there hasn't been any development in Mill Valley since, I forget, the 1970s, I believe. So why are they not knocking on our door, or who knocks on whose door? What's the process when you decide to work with a city? There's a marriage, and give us a quick sense about how that works. And I made a comment that we need to make the first move. Can you confirm that I got that right?
Yeah, so, and I'd reference my good friend who lives next door, Fred Sherman, who said that it's really hard to build affordable housing throughout the Bay Area, but it happens. So I know for us, and there, I will say that the ones who have built historically here, Eden Housing, Ecumenical Association for Housing based in San Rafael, Mercy Housing, Bridge Housing are some of the best, mission-driven, value-driven, very capable. John Yolis worked for Bridge Housing in a prior life and can tell you more about it. But there's 101 cities and counties in the Bay Area. Mid-Penn works with about 40 of them. And we are very careful in where we put our energy. And there, it's where there's community support, it's where there's political leadership, where there's a will and where there's a commitment. And it requires that to get this hard work done.
And you didn't mention cash, so tell me about the cash.
So you need cash, and we can talk. There's a lot of county and state and federal money that can be leveraged. That's the good news, and it's amazing the leverage you can get. So you don't have to pay for the whole thing, but all of those sources want to see some what they call local skin in the game. They want to see that the local community is investing dollars and resources. And so it's a price of entry, not just for the really good mission-driven developers to come work with the community to create the right apartment community in town, but also for the financing to come in at all. It's just the rules of the game.
So there's a minimum size, as I understand it, just to make the thing pencil, right? So you said 1.5 acres and 40 units roughly. If it's smaller than that, it just doesn't hold together in terms of its long-term sustainability. Yeah. So what are we talking in terms of what Mill Valley would have to throw in to make something like that happen?
Well, so I think in one of our prior meetings when we had some folks come and present this, it was kind of in that 35 to 40 unit range, and you need that just for it to be economically feasible with all the different funding that comes in and its requirements. If you had a 40 unit development, you'd be, you could be in the $25–30 million range easily. You would need, I think in the kind of $3 to $5 million range, I think just to have a shot at that price of entry. I do think that the county would be a significant contributor and possibly disproportionately to Mill Valley if we showed serious commitment to this. They are eager to get opportunities in Southern Marin.
So one more question along those lines. If the city was to contribute land, like that land next to the PSB, that's, I assume, it's almost as good as cash in certain ways. Would there still need to be cash? Would we still need to look at raising funds in other ways if we just put the land into the kitty based on what you normally see?
Yes, I believe we would, and they would count the land, and I think they would want to see more, and that's been my experience.
Okay, and that 25-30 million, was that inclusive or exclusive of land value? Is that after the city's tied the land up?
So that would be, kind of a ballpark on total development costs, inclusive of land value.
Okay, all right. Okay, and then one last question for you, and thanks for letting me, I feel like I'm doing an interview here, but you know so much more about this than anybody else, and frankly, I've been interested in this for a long time, and literally, with Jessica when she was still around, we didn't know what to do, so it's great to have the expertise on board now. It's thrilling. The last thing I've heard a lot of public commentary on is, hey, just raise a tax, don't sell something you can never get back. What's your experience with the ability of raising taxes specifically to support low-income housing in the dollars and magnitudes that we're talking about, and in the timeliness of getting something done as compared to there's always pain. So how does that pain measure the other pain?
Yeah, so, I think the place to start that discussion is that it's the rules of the state that those measures require a 2/3 vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the reality is that would be a steep hill to climb in town. My observation has been that it's difficult for the Mill Valley currently to pass, school bonds, for instance, or other bonds. So I think that would be a long-term endeavor. I think, that there's a lot of need in the community and benefit far beyond this initial development. So folks are interested in that over the long term. There's a lot of discussion at the state and desire of a lot of communities to lower that to a 50+1. That might open up opportunities. I'd certainly love to be part of that, but I think it would, be a very long-term endeavor. And my personal estimate would be that it would be difficult to achieve today.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, I've just got one last question, and thank you, fellow commissioners, for bearing with me, taking the time here. Hey, Danielle, I got one for you. So we, as you described well, the subcommittee took their work seriously. We put a whole bunch of stuff into a sieve and then dropped. And we looked at what fell out the other side of it to begin a process. And I, for one, felt that if we're going to get serious, we have to put sunshine on this very quickly, even knowing that it would create, potentially neighborhood opposition. But it didn't feel right to me to get too far down the path without, pulling the public and the council along. So, with that in mind, one of the questions I've got is, okay, we've got two lots there. One that is off, I don't golf, it's what, the 7th tee or whatever in the golf course. The other one is the so-called grassy knoll. What's the deal there? Is that owned by the city? Do we have clear rights? Are we sure that we can do something with it if that's where we end up? Tell me more about where we are in that process.
I think that's part of next steps is, title reports, things of that nature. It's associated with the golf course, so that will be an important conversation as part of the next phase.
Yeah, so it's okay not to know yet, but it's something we know we eventually have to know. That's kind of where we are at this point. And we brought the public in now as compared to, hiring people and doing a bunch more work and giving a baked cake. We wanted to have the public involved in the process now. And also, is it correct that the combination of the that area inside the park and then the grassy knoll represents less than 3% or around 3% of the total park square footage of the golf course square footage?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so those are my questions. So I would just maybe work our way around. Planning Commissioner Yules, do you have questions of Danielle or other members of the team here at this point?
I just wanted to thank Danielle and staff for the work they've done so far to identify these possible sites, which of course this committee is seeing for the first time tonight. And I did want to ask two things. Danielle, could you expand a little bit on the potential future non-golf golf course programming that's potentially in the works?
I'm going to let Alan take that.
So this summer we've piloted a couple Sunday afternoons led by the golf club. They are organizing community events and allowing people to come out on the golf course, not having to play golf, picnic, run the dog, throw frisbee. Those have been a big hit so far, so we're looking at least probably considering those on a monthly basis. So that's certainly an opportunity in the neighborhood. You know, I could foresee, you know, closing down the golf course on, you know, Easter Sunday morning to, you know, allow an Easter egg hunt in the community. We host one down at the community center, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't encourage the same opportunity on the golf course. So we're looking at a number of ways of using that space for things other than just chasing a little white ball around.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I would just add to that and say that, you know, understanding that there is an element of loss associated with the Highland Park community, that, you know, I would think that Park and Rec would be as reasonable as possible in terms of providing, you know, other uses within the golf course to, you know, help cover what is if the property ends up being sold. Someone described to me the golf course as a beautiful park that nobody can get into. So, and I would note, by the way, that there is now a pathway that's going to be made to go through the park, through the golf course, which will open things up more also. So,
okay, great.
Good question, John. Other questions?
Yeah, just one other, which is the MMWD reservoir site. So that is a site under their ownership and control. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
And have we by chance had a conversation with them about, you know, possible utilization of that land?
Right, that could be part of the next steps, I think. Just verifying our assumptions that it cannot be used. So that could be part of the verification of our assumptions.
And there are issues with egress too, to get in and out of the site. So, but there might be a solution there, right? There might be something there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a large site that's potentially worth exploring. And I just want to also acknowledge, you know, first I want to thank everybody who made comments during the general session earlier, public comment period, and also acknowledge the understandable amount of consternation that this item has raised. And I hope that this public process, this very first meeting where we're talking about it, will help allay some of the concerns and also set the framework for how we're starting to evaluate the options to address, you know, more equitable creation of affordable housing in Mill Valley.
So with that, maybe we can move on to Greg. You're on mute, Greg.
Thank you, John. I want to start a little bit, since you have come up with some interesting ideas, alternate locations for you know, affordable housing, which is kind of the first thought that I have is like, rather than where can we sell property in order to get money to fund affordable housing in an undisclosed area, is that, you know, let's get serious about really looking at where we could build affordable housing. And you know, I saw a couple on there that I had, that Danielle, that you had listed, that I was really curious about, because I met somebody a long time ago that said, oh, I used to work in that Pac Bell building as an operator, you know, back in the day. And so, you know, you see that there, you know, at 300 East Blythedale, and it kind of makes me wonder is, you know, who owns that now, and what size is that lot, and you know, what potential is there, because it's on transit locations, and it's, you know, it's not up in a hillside in a WUI area. So
if I could maybe take that. So there's two sides of this coin, right? One is the build the stack. How much money does it take to build the stack, and where can the city come up with that money? And then the second question, which is probably the more controversial one, is where are we actually going to put the housing, right? And if that will likely develop a lot of public interest. Also, what we kicked around is we looked at maybe a half dozen, you know, sites, not seriously just to say, okay, is it ridiculous? Are there sites in town that can handle an acre and a half? And they're not a lot, but there's enough around that there's a possibility. But the point is that our subcommittee, we're not specialists or experts, but the people who do the development are. So the step is you bring a developer in, and the developer does their own due diligence, right? They'll talk to the various churches in town because there are some state incentives evidently surrounding churches. They could chat with PG&E and determine whether that empty site, which is really interesting, it's got parking in the back. It's very interesting whether that works, and they'll know, number-wise, how to make the development happen. So that's the two sides of the marriage. Bringing in a non-for-profit developer with expertise to go down the next set of challenges, which is to identify where we're going to put these 40 units and help us through the public process and react to all of that, while at the same time going down the other half of the equation of, okay, how much money is this going to take and where are we going to get the money? The point is you got to bring the two together, and that's the way we envision things moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just, I have, I appreciated what Matt had to say, because our office, BAR Architects, has done a considerable amount of work with Mid-Penn and other Bridge and other firms. And, half of our work is multifamily housing. And, I think, we've just got approval on 1,000 units of affordable housing, in the Bay Area. So it's something that's important to me. I think it's one of the reasons that I'm, kind of trying to help on this committee. And so I'm serious about making it happen. I just kind of want to get, my interest is, okay, where can we make this happen before we start, looking at selling community assets that I have to say and I think maybe, are we going to have some deliberation time at the end?
Yes, we'll have deliberation time. I just was about to interrupt.
Right.
And
So
say
then,
that.
so let me not get into that then. So I just wanted to ask a couple other questions.
Can I just piggyback on the Pac Bell site?
Oh, yeah.
That I could see as also being an acquisition site where, the building, it's a beautiful building that is maintained. It might not, provide a site for a true affordable housing developer, but it could be an acquisition. So that could be an acquisition property, and that's something that, would be part, I think, that we could, a real estate person could help with as well.
Okay. Well, I thought that was creative, and I think maybe something like that. I don't know I guess the first question I had was what was the size of the lot, and what was the value of that property, if any of that. And it sounds like from what John said that those are some things that would need to be evaluated further, with the nonprofit. But the other was when you talked about church sites, have churches been kind of approached about this, just out of curiosity? And like,
why don't we do that during the deliberative phase? I mean, it seems kind of more deliberative.
Okay,
We haven't had any detailed,
I guess what I was good. The reason I ask is because, some of the corridors that would make the most sense for me to have multifamily housing on, affordable housing, would be on Miller, on, off major transit, where you don't have to worry about parking lots so much, is that you're near transit. So there's advantages there.
Right.
And Camino Alto, we've seen that through other meetings we've seen on the Planning Commission and discussions we've had Bay Area wise, is, so that I was just curious about that, and whether there is open property, say across from the middle school on that property, or are there other places on Camino Alto that you may have looked at it more specifically. And then I was also, I kind of wanted to ask a couple more quick questions, and then I'll let someone else move on here. But when you looked at the Miller and the Sloat, that kind of combination of property, and then there's a parking lot that's just north of the city-owned parking lot. And I know the FEMA challenges are there, but is that, with the FEMA flood zone issues side and some possible changes to our parking requirements in our parking code, is that actually a possibility as far as that property? Or you said it's for sale. Does that include everything in there?
That's another one. That Sloat site has been of interest to a lot of I've gotten a lot of phone calls for senior housing at that location. I think the floodway basically kills the opportunity at this point. So there is potential. I think there's a lot of dollars that need to go into spending money to see if we can modify that floodway area that would allow a building to be built on that property.
Okay.
So
And then what about
it
that,
will
the
require
parking,
more dollars.
the parking that's behind the city parking? Is that all kind of part of that same lot? Who owns that lot behind there?
Yeah, that's a different lot that's owned actually by the people that own the Jolly King, the front laundromat area.
Oh.
Yeah, there's lots of
Interesting.
smaller
Okay. Well,
partnerships.
that was what I was just curious because to me, you know, over the years as I've gotten off the bus, I've always seen that parking lot, and that just seemed like a natural place to do something because it's right on transit. So that's kind of what I was. And so the last question is, as you were looking at some of these odd spaces around and you were evaluating them for feasibility, did you look at kind of, you know, the fire hazard of developing them? Because some of those are probably undevelopable just because they're in such a high risk, not even just a typical WUI area, but like the Tenderfoot property is such a high fire hazard that if we sold that off and then allowed people to develop that, if, you know, that would, you know, add risk to the community of, you know, just, there's just going to be spaces I think that if they're owned by the city, they might be owned by the city to keep them as open space to protect us from issues related to emergency evacuation and, you know, additional traffic and, you know, just life safety stuff. So I guess I would just encourage you to kind of look at some of that before we think about how we sell potential city-owned property and what the impact that would have on the overall fire safety and emergency evacuation and traffic congestion that we all see all too often on East Flydale.
I guess if that was a question, we would say that we have not done a thorough, detailed analysis. That was what's anticipated in the next phase. And what I would say is that you don't finish a race, you don't start, and we're just trying to get the race started right now. So, you know, there's plenty of work still to do, but those are all very good observations.
Okay, thank you, John. That's all I have for now.
Sure. Urban, you want to go next?
Yeah. So so I normally have a lot of questions and make super long comments. So I'm going to break with tradition and not make any questions or comments right now. Everyone's laughing because they know that's what happens. So we have, you know, 100 people online. I know a lot of people want to get a chance to talk, and I look forward to listening to what everybody has to say. So I'd say, you know, let's move on to that.
Thank you, kind sir. Matt, do you have anything?
I don't, John. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, so at this point, I think we're going to move on to public comment, and then a reminder that at the end of the public comment, we will then begin our deliberation, and what is before us is the question of proceeding to council next week with a proposal to essentially, you know, shoot the gun and start the race. Okay, so let's go ahead and Mark, you're in charge of getting us through our public comments. I would ask that if things are getting repetitive and they've been said multiple times, that, you know, if you just want to say, hey, I don't like it or I do like it, you know, 2 words is fine, we'll get it. And one other thing I wanted to mention before next council meeting, if the members of the community want to get together and create a like a spokesperson, that I talked to the mayor about this, and she is happy to allow that spokesperson a little more time, say 5 to 7 minutes, to do a more elongated presentation, with the hope that if that occurs, then we won't need every single person in the area to say the same thing, they don't like it. So that's kind of where we are generally. And with that, big fan of free speech. If you want to say something, we're here to hear what you have to say. We'll be listening, and let's go ahead and get things rolling there, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. First up, we have Tay Franklin. If you can please state your name and address for the record, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hi, just confirming you can hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tay Franklin, and I live on Heather Way around the corner from the park. I have prepared remarks, but I honestly want to say I'm going to throw a lot of them out the window and just speak a little bit from the heart in response to Councilmember McCauley's really heartfelt remarks and leadership. I know that he and other leaders, including Councilmember Carmel, are really committed, but have to balance a lot of issues. And just seeing the really authentic, tears and emotion around what it means to deal with what we're struggling with and where I'm coming from, which is the extraordinary pain and hardship that working families endure and every day in this community. And I'm going to say again, we live around the corner from this park, right? But we have the extreme privilege of local grocery stores and gas stations and restaurants and local police and fire. And the living situations of our essential workers range from challenging to crisis, including homelessness, of working people. I find that shocking. And to me, that's where I'm coming from tonight, is it's not just a laudable goal. It's actually an emergency. And we all wish we had a better federal or state plan, and parcel and transfer taxes and other ideas that really kind of spread this more equitably in our community resonate a lot with me, but over decades, they don't happen. The last time is the 70s we heard tonight that we developed affordable housing in this community. So I think it's an and solution. And I welcome my neighbors who I believe are really sincere in wanting to pursue that. And I want to do that too. But I want to say we did not start this journey with the expectation that one of the most promising options would be in our neighborhood. But that makes it even more important to us. We feel blessed by the abundance of open space. I mean, just walking through the golf course the other day, and the fact the city, but as part of this commit, that we could have our Easter egg hunts and all of our traditions. I mean, we have so much open space and we would still keep it, and we could show leadership. So I would say to my neighbors, it's a sacrifice. We raised our kids on the grassy field. We developed friendships.
Hey, thank you for your comments. Your time has expired. If you have any further comments, you can feel free to email the planning@cityofmillvalley.org.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the time.
Yes, sir. Next, we have Katie Weber. If you could please state your name and address for the record, I'll go ahead and unmute you.
My name is Katie Weber. I'm at 263 East Blythedale Avenue. I work in the area of developing programs to help seniors and adults with disabilities remain independent in the community. I'm actually commenting on the first topic of home match. First of all, I'm very excited. The Mill Valley is investing in expanding the house match program because I think this will help address some of the affordable housing challenges. And that Covia is the lead for this program. Some of the comments around the home match program as relates to Mill Valley is around what's being discussed this evening. One of the stats is that 18% of homes in Mill Valley are one-person households and are over the age of 60 years old. One of the biggest challenges for seniors is to financially stay in the community.
So Katie, we had closed that first item.
But we didn't have public comment. We didn't have public comment though.
Right, exactly.
so what I'm just saying, I just want to make sure that, let me just say these few things so that we can get them in the record. Because I know this is a huge opportunity to address, expanding affordable housing. So I really think we should look at providing grants to seniors for home modifications, provide funds for legal mitigation to resolve owner dispute, to reduce, because the biggest challenge, as we all know, is we all want people to stay independent in the community. We also want our workers to stay in the community. I know we're talking about expanding, development, but there is a huge opportunity to really look at leveraging Section 8 housing to connect to ADUs. And I really feel like the home match program, along having them expand, be much more of a community navigator, will help address some of these issues. So I think that's the biggest thing in conclusion. I just really feel that, as we go forward with this home ed program, that we really look at, in addition, connecting to now helping them navigate the ADU process, but also helping them connect to the resources, because I feel like if we can help our seniors stay
Katie,
ahead of the community, then we can.
2 minutes is up, Katie.
Right. All right, thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
the time.
And once again, I'll just remind everyone the 2-minute time frame. And then if you do have additional comments, planning at cityofmillvalley.org.
And if we could stay in the public side, if we could stay in the public side analysis comments, that there was no need for a public open time on the first matter because there was no action taken. That's why we didn't open it up.
Thank you, Chair. Next up, we have Leslie Katzman. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. And if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, my name
Yes,
is
we can.
Leslie Katzman. I'm at 2 Heather Lane in Scott Highlands. I'm just going to go ahead. Our neighborhood park is the fabric that holds us together and the artery of streets and open space that physically brings us together. It is very well used by our community, and to propose a housing development violates both the Mill Valley and Housing Advisory Committee core values and mission statements that you explicitly stated. And one other thing, the whole idea of a transparent process, which didn't happen at all. These values are put in place for a reason. It is why we love this town, it is why we live in our neighborhoods. Scott Highlands is defined by this park. When I tell someone where I live, when I discuss to some new resident why they like our neighborhood, how they found our neighborhood, they talk about our park. And it's usually not the playground part of the park, but the grassy field part of the park. We have something special here. Our neighborhood park has nothing to do with the definition of underutilized space. Where did that come from? We use this park for all our events, including over 50 years of Easter egg hunts and over 20 years of annual community picnics. We have had over 120 RSVPs at our last fall picnic, and many more people showed up. We do all the things that you discussed and many more. Our community uses this space for our planned neighborhood events, both large and small, and also daily during our walks, recesses, and escapes from our house. We should have more places like this, not fewer. This is the big picture. In a time of social distancing, excessive computer use, the sadly decreasing amount of in-person interactions, the increasing need for our children to have creative and non-program play, especially in nature, we need our parks and open space. It's a priority for our whole society. We can't get back these gems. They'll be gone forever.
Thank you for your time, Leslie. Your time has expired. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Charlie Wilmoth. If you could please state your name and address for the record, I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Hello, it's Charlie Wilmoth. I'm at 6 Heather Way. You hear me?
Yes, just fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we moved into our home, 6 Heather Way, in 2006. So we've been in this neighborhood for 14 years, overlooking this park. I walk by that park every single day, a couple times a day with the dog. Our dining room looks into the park. I can see kids playing there, people playing golf. I've seen, kids, probably what they shouldn't have been doing was sleeping out in that park. Middle school kids that put a little tent in there. I've been participating in the Easter egg hunt, the fall picnic. We've volunteered for that. I see people out there with their dogs. We've taken our dog out there. My kids were 10, 6, and 3 when we moved in here. The value of having that park was phenomenal and what attracted to us to this neighborhood. I do not question the problem. I question the solution. So our home that we originally bought over on Molino, we bought for $550,000. Today, Zillow says that's a $2.2 million house. I do not question the affordable housing issue. I question the solution. My kids, I want to be able to move here too. So the key issue is, I think affordable housing is a laudable goal, but the way you're trying to go about it is wrongheaded. You know, so it's to steal a jewel, a treasure of the community forever that really does hold this heart of this community together, as you've seen with 100+ people on here. You know, the reality is I listened to the ADU issue, and the only approving 12 ADUs a year. That's 1 per month. If you just added 2 a month, you would create 48 new units over 2 years. I'll tell you, with what you're gonna hit with litigation and everything on this thing, you'll never get a property done in 2 years here. You could hire somebody at City Hall to fast track those permits and get done in 2 years what you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have